Hey guys, welcome back to a new Destiny PvP video. In this one, I'm going to be showing you guys my Bones of Eao Bladedancer build, which is what I've been running since the start of the new year. This build is largely the same as most other Bladedancer builds, but the Bones of Eao double control jump is what makes it stand out. Initially, I made this build for 6v6 where I felt I lacked a bit of control when using Blink, and at the same time it didn't allow me to fully utilize the in-air accuracy of the last word. So this build was made with the last word in mind, but it works just fine with any gun. That said, it's still important to remember that the last word caters to a very different playstyle than say a Mida or a Doctrine of Passing, so it might take a game or two to adjust when switching between primary weapons. So let's quickly run over the subclass before we go into the specifics of the perks and how they will benefit you. For my grenade I use the Skip Grenade, which is admittedly slightly overpowered in its current state. It's a nade that you can toss around a corner or into a choke point to tag someone up before you challenge, and that suits my playstyle very well. For the jump we're obviously using better control, and to add to Arc Blade we're also using Razor's Edge for some added range. Arc Blade is very weak in its current state, so Razor's Edge can be a lifesaver. We're also going to be running Backstab as the potential for one-hit melee is very strong and also plays very well with the double control jump. For stat modifiers we'll be running Path Forbidden and Way of the Drifter to max out agility and have a decent amount of recovery. I find agility to be the most beneficial to this build, and recovery is something that I value highly as I like to play relatively aggressively. For our last two modifiers we'll be running the standard Quick Draw and Hungering Blade. These are the obvious choices as the healing from Hungering Blade is an absolute must on a Bladedancer in its current state, and the Quick Draw perks gives the Bladedancer arguably the strongest neutral game to make up for the weak super. And as most of you probably already know, using Quick Draw with the last word really helps as its handling is very sluggish and you can negate one of the key weaknesses of the gun by running Quick Draw. So one of the main reasons I like this build so much is the added mobility. You're not quite as fast as when you use Blink, but that is more than made up for by how easily you can move around the map. You can really take full advantage of the cover that's scattered around the maps, and it's much easier to juke out enemy guardians and get out of bad situations. One thing I noticed almost immediately was that juking out Russian shotgunners was far easier, especially when using the last word, as you can jump over them, get damage on them, and stay in the air for much longer than they anticipate. Shotgunners will usually wait for you to be back on the ground before shooting, so this way you can buy a lot of time to run away or kill them depending on the situation. But one might ask, why not just use the normal better control jump? And if you like it, nothing's stopping you from doing that and using another exotic. It works well too, but what I really like about having Bones of Eao along with the better control is that it allows for two sharp directional changes in mid-air, something that can really put off your opponent and help you escape from bad situations. Another thing that I like is that it dents the jump a bit. When I'm not using the bones, I find myself jumping too far or too high when using better control, and that's an issue I don't have when I'm using the Bones of Eao. There is one problem with not running Blink, and that is that it weakens your super even more, as you won't be able to close gaps quite as quickly, and the super is rather squishy, so you're gonna have to learn how to use cover and vertical space and your Razor's Edge ability wisely. Even throwing grenades while in your super can be a lifesaver sometimes. But one more thing that the double control jump will allow you to do is use the Blink Strike ability to its maximum potential. The bones allow for much greater mid-air control. You can go well above your enemies and drop down on them, or you can use quick shifts and momentum to get behind them. This way you can make much more use of the backstab ability. One thing that a lot of people actually don't know is that if you Blink Strike someone from above, it's almost always going to count as a backstab due to how the Hunter melee works. Honestly, I don't know for sure, but it seems like the tip of the blade determines where the hit registers, and if you're above someone, it's much easier to manipulate this to your advantage and get the backstabs, and therefore the bones are really great for this because you can go much further up and you can stay in the air for longer and wait to the right moment to drop down on them. So when you're using this build, you really got to take advantage of your vertical space, making it ideal for last word obviously, but also sidearms. I don't use sidearms very often, but in the few games that I did, I put in some work with them. They play very similarly to the last word. They have a fast time to kill and great accuracy in the air, so if you're not a big fan of the last word, or snipers for that matter, I highly recommend trying this build out with a Mida and a sidearm. Personally, I run all sorts of primaries with this build, but almost always a sniper. You can literally use anything with this build and still have fun and be effective. The evasiveness alone is what I love the most about this build, and as you will see in some of the gameplay, I've even used a fusion rifle with it, had a ton of fun with it. So don't think that using a last word and a sniper is the only way to go with this build. You can try out a lot of different guns, a lot of different setups, and you can still have fun, and the evasiveness, as I said, is what makes this build so great. even though using as a last word or a sidearm is something that really caters to the build, you can use anything, and I highly recommend doing that because right now Destiny is really dry, so trying out different builds, new builds, and new weapons is something that can keep it fun for you guys, so I highly recommend that. So that's my Bones of Eao Bladedancer build. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.